Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited. I got to tell you, Alan, God, I love you. You know, I mean, you have proven just in 15 minutes how you don't listen to the government, right? And of course, all the things that we heard back in the 90s, that we certainly are not at peak oil. We certainly are not at the end of oil. And just great. Tim, I want to thank you and the Heartland Institute for having me here today. I appreciate it. You know, Tim and I were guys that were in Washington that put our conservative principles ahead of politics. And we stood up and we fought both parties. I can tell you, we sometimes, I didn't know, I was like, Tim, are these guys, we talking to Republicans sometimes? It was difficult. It really was. And I definitely appreciate his friendship. I'll tell you a little story about that sign. I was gonna do something else in the opening, but since he brought it up, I think it's a great story. You know, I came into Congress representing the coast of Louisiana at the time when the Deepwater Horizon had happened. And literally my congressional district was ground zero. And as you can imagine, I grew up just appreciating and loving the oil and gas industry. There is no industry, the energy industry, there's no industry like the energy industry in this country. In fact, I have challenged people time and time again to show me an industry that has built the middle class better and more secure than the energy industry, and no one has been able to challenge that. This industry is just a great, great industry, whether it's coal, natural gas, oil. No one puts money in the pockets of the middle class and jobs in those families like the energy industry. So that's ground zero for me, right? And of course, the president instituted a moratorium after the accident, just basically shutting down the Gulf of Mexico. Well, when you shut down the Gulf of Mexico, you shut down a lot of jobs, a lot of good jobs, a lot of jobs that people depend on to feed their family, put their kids through school, put their kids through college. And it was disheartening because, you know, you can understand, in Louisiana, we've seen many cycles in our energy industry, and those cycles absolutely cause pain. But to have the government inflict that type of pain unnecessarily was extremely disappointing. And so here we are trying to get the president to understand that you gotta start the Gulf of Mexico back, that just because there was an accident on BP's rig doesn't mean that Shell's rig was doing it the same way. And that's something that I argued in committee. And so I was getting ready, let me just put this frame. I had never been to the US Capitol before in my life, before I got elected to Congress, right? And so the Saints had just won the Super Bowl the year before, I think that's right. And then they're gonna open the first game of the regular season. They're gonna play the Green Bay Packers. It's gonna be in August. No, September, August, right when the NFL season starts. And we're back home. We had been, remember Tim, it seemed like we had been working forever, okay? And I'm gonna go to the game. I get home, man, I get to see my little boy. My wife's happy to see me. I think she is. And so I'm getting ready to go to the game, and all of a sudden we get a call, and we gotta come back to Washington because the president is gonna give a job speech to Congress, a job speech to Congress. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not gonna go well. And so I tell my wife this, I said, listen, I cannot believe I'm gonna have to miss the Saints game. I'm gonna have to listen to the president talk about jobs. The man has never created a job in his life. Okay, it's serious, a community organizer, never had a payroll, never paid insurance. So, you know, my wife, understanding that I probably should go through anger management, it's why I got in politics, she says, don't you embarrass me. I said, look, I promise. We get back to Washington, get ready for the job. So I walk into my office, Miller Muley, who's here, he's my communications director. Now I was in back there. I said, I got enough. I got a plan. Like, what you gonna do? I said, I want a sign. I want you to make me a sign that says, drilling equals jobs. And they're like, what you gonna do with it? Put it outside? I said, no, I'm taking it with me to the floor. And they're like, no. you can't do that. Don't you remember when Joe Wilson called the president a liar? It just wasn't a good thing. I said, look, I looked at all the rule books. I'm not the greatest lawyer, but I'm a pretty good one. It never says that you can't bring a sign. I promise I won't say anything. So there was a tussle in between the staff, and finally I won. I said, no, don't make me one, make me two. And they said, why you need two? I said, well, they might frisk me, and I'll put one in one pocket, and I'll give them that one. It'll be my decoy, right? And so I get down on the floor, I get down early, looking around. I find me a seat right above the president's teleprompters, because those teleprompters are there first. And so I get right above the teleprompter to make sure that he can see this. And I sit down, I'm just kind of ready, and so members start coming around, and I get Jeff Duncan from South Carolina is next to me. Mick Mulvaney, who's now the OMB director for Trump. Great guy, huh? Great guy. What a great pick. And they're like, Landry, what you doing here so early? Because normally I'm late for everything. And I said, well, I got this sign. Check this out. I show it up. Mick says, you got another one? And they say, hey, Joe. Tell Joe Wilson, look what Landry has. Joe's like, do not say anything. I said, I promise. What you going to do with it? I said, well, here's the deal. I said, I'm going to give the president the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to let him start talking. And if he mentions energy, which creates jobs, private sector jobs, jobs that pay taxes, that allow him and the government to hire teachers and firefighters and police officers and all the things that he really wants to talk to us about, I said, I will not pull it out. But if he doesn't, I said, I'm gonna pull his sign out. Because he just does. That's a true jobs speech in 2 words. And so he started. Man, 15, I was getting tired. It was getting nauseating. So finally, I pulled this sign out. And I promise you, just Google Jeff Landry drilling, and you'll see it. Because the press gallery went literally crazy. Okay, you could just hear the cameras. And you know what I mean? I did the president a favor. He never thanked me. The next day, on all the major newspapers, front page, everywhere across the country was this sign. That was a job speech. I just want you to know that. But I really do appreciate having an opportunity to speak to y'all about energy and President Trump's plan. You know, I got to tell you, I have just been so excited. You know, if you don't realize the impact of the energy industry, let me just share with you some statistics. Just here in Louisiana, we got 80,000 jobs directly tied to the energy industry. Louisiana is kind of like Texas in that it covers both upstream, midstream, and downstream, right? I mean, if you want to look at the pipeline system in this country, and if I had a map, I don't have any fancy slides like Alan does. As a lawyer, if I start putting up slides, you're going to go to sleep. And so you'd see it looks like a spaghetti, like all of these pipelines move out of, because the Gulf of Mexico was such a big elephant find, still is to this day. And 52 or 53% of the refining capacity of this country, just let that sink in for a moment. 53% of the refining capacity in this country is located along the Gulf Coast. 26% of that refining capacity is here in Texas. 23% of that refining capacity is in Louisiana. I mean, 50%. That's where you get your gasoline, all your refined products. And I got to tell you, Scott Pruitt, gee whiz, you can't find a better guy than him. And I'm going to tell you the impact of having somebody like Scott in this office. You know, when Hurricane Harvey hit Texas, okay? I mean, hurricanes hit Louisiana all the time. All the time. You know, we know that impact. A lot of people came over here, helped a lot of people in Houston. But there was a huge problem that occurred that consumers around the country had no idea was going on. And that was that the refining capacity of this country had been impacted. And it had been impacted at an unusual time because during the fall season is when the federal government requires all these refineries to start creating all these crazy blends of gas that cost consumers tons, millions of dollars extra. They were getting ready to go through recycling and starting to ramp up for those boutique fuels for the winter or coming down from the summer, either way. And because of the impact of those refineries, they needed to be able to sell the gas that they had and be able to run it through those pipelines to get fuel to the East Coast and then to barge it over to Florida because there's no pipelines that go down there. And that gas didn't meet the federal requirements. Do you know what would have happened to the price of gas had not Scott Pruitt, we not get on the phone, Ken Paxton, the Governor Abbott, myself called Scott and said, Scott, you gotta grant a waiver. There's a waiver requirement. You grant these waivers, you're absolutely gonna save consumers millions of dollars. And guess what? That's what he did. That's exactly what he did. That's what President Trump did. That's his commitment to energy. Those are the kind of things that this administration is absolutely bringing to the table. And I can tell you, I listened to Scott, invited him to Louisiana just a week ago, okay, to come and speak to the Louisiana Chemical Association. It was the first time I'd had an opportunity to talk to listen to Scott speak, and he wasn't speaking to a bunch of attorneys, but he was actually in there talking to an industry. And it was remarkable because he did a great job of basically reflecting President Trump's philosophy that it is high time that the government start creating partnerships with industry, that the industry players are not guilty until proven innocent, right? And he went out there and he explained this in such an eloquent way that when it was over, I had guys from the industry said, man, I can't believe this, the way he understands the issues from the top all the way to the bottom. He understands the impact that rules and regulations have. He understands the need for some of those rules, okay? He understands that there absolutely has to be rules and that bad actors have to be taken off the field. And he does it in a way that he can explain to people that, guess what? When you over-regulate any industry, you destroy jobs. And so those are the kinds of people that Donald Trump has put in place. And I tell you, it was interesting because I visited about 3 months before that with Ryan Zinke. Y'all know who Ryan Zinke is? Well, yeah, yes, absolutely. Another great guy. I can tell you, Secretary Zinke gets it. And you know what? In visiting with him on a separate occasion before I'd heard Scott speak, Zinke explained to me his vision for the Department of Interior. And it was exactly the same thing. Partnerships, right? Streamlining, decentralizing Washington, D.C. I mean, you know why that red line was up there, Alan? You know why? Because everybody who thinks they knew something about the continental United States was in Washington, right? If that bureaucrat would have been in that area, that line might not have been there. But guess what? They believe that they can see from Washington, D.C. what's going on in Nevada. And so Zinke understands that as well. You know, Scott did, going back to some of the things that Scott did, I mean, he immediately understood that we needed to roll back the Clean Power Plan. And I'm going to use that as an opportunity to explain to y'all how important attorney generals are in this country, okay? Over the last couple of decades, as the regulatory agencies have just grown and grown and grown, it is conservative Republican attorney generals that have pushed back, that have taken federalism right on and said, you know what? These regulations are unconstitutional, right? They're overburdensome. They've been promulgated contrary to law. This is not what Congress meant when they gave you that authority. because attorney generals are really the last line of defense. It's really been exciting. I got to tell you, Tim, you know how hard it was. We'd bang our heads up against a brick wall in Washington in the U.S. House and never get anywhere. As the attorney general of Louisiana, I get to sue the federal government, right? I mean, how exciting. I'm like, God, this is great, you know? And President Trump coming out and immediately imposing a regulatory freeze and signing an executive order that says, look, you got to go identify 2 regulations to eliminate before you can create one. And look, it's amazing. 2 back-to-back quarters of 3% growth. Anybody think that's just an accident? I mean, 2 consecutive. I'm not an economist, but I don't think we had 3% growth before that quarter at any time before 2000, after 2008. No time. I can tell you why that happens. That happens when you have a president that puts a team together that understands what it takes to run businesses, to unleash the free market, to understand America's potential to be energy dominant. Energy dominant. What he just showed you said that, guess what? Saudi Arabia, you second, we first. And it's the truth. They absolutely, look, what he showed you there, they understand. And that is why they're so scared. But guess what? It's too late. We got a great revolution here. I mean, if all of a sudden we get to really start expanding our refineries, let me tell you the impact that LNG has had in Louisiana and on this coast right here. I mean, it's unbelievable. Unbelievable. And guess what? We're still doing it. And I'm going to tell you something. We're doing it responsibly. Sure, there are bad actors out there, but guess what? The vast majority of the industry understands that they appreciate the environment. Because guess what? Their kids live there. They're probably hunters, fishermen, golfers, hikers. They appreciate the environment just like everyone else. But guess what? They understand that if they go hiking down in the Grand Canyon, they need a real thick coat down at the bottom, depending on the time of year. And you need a good sleeping bag. And you can bet you that those products were made with fossil fuels. They understand that as well. I'll just tell you, the President's America First Energy Plan is the first step to making America great again. And if you think about when America was great, you recognize that America was great when it was energy independent. Not many people know, but 90%, 95% of all the oil and gas used in World War II by all of the Allies, guess where it came from? And Louisiana, don't forget us, we are like a second-class citizen. It was refined in Louisiana, but that's right. That's right. Our energy industry in this country freed the world from tyranny. Our ability to be energy independent will continue to deliver those kinds of promises to the rest of the world. And so, please, I got to tell you, I'm with you. I appreciate what you do in the energy industry. And if we stay active and if we stay on message, America will absolutely be great again. Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.